Control-Alt-Hacked is a series where we talk about video games, including hacks and data breaches. I'm Paul John Spaulding, and co-hosting with me, as always, is Sam White and Kyle Haglund. And in this episode, we're joined by Fergus Hay, CEO and co-founder of The Hacking Games. Fergus, welcome to the podcast.
Guys, it's a total pleasure. Thank you for inviting me on. And I'm super excited to spend some time together talking about the wonderful world of gaming, hacking, and cyber.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here. Let's jump right into it. Let's waste no time because I want to talk about The Hacking Games, obviously. You co-founded that company, as I had already mentioned. And why don't you tell us a bit about it? What is going on?
Yeah, so we set up The Hacking Games 2.5 years ago with a vision to create a generation of ethical hackers to make the world safer. And effectively what we're doing is using artificial intelligence to identify the next generation of elite, often neurodiverse, Gen Z hackers, but not based on what they're doing on LinkedIn or government compliance certificates or what they're doing at university, because the very best guys are not doing that. But we do it based on how they game, how they play computer games, how they hack computer games. And then we look at their decision-making mindsets and levels of neurodiversity to identify the really elite level hackers that are around the world. And we provide them pathways to use their skills for good and not bad. And that's the journey that we're on at the moment.
Fergus, I'm wondering if you could set the stage here. Gaming, technology, cybercrime, how do they all intersect?
The scale of the problem is that actually it's your data. So last year, the world lost $10.5 trillion to cybercrime globally. If that is true, that is the global cost of COVID, according to the IMF. Next year, it's supposed to be $24 trillion. And if that is true, that is the GDP of the United States. Whether those numbers are accurate or not isn't that relevant. What's relevant is the direction of travel. What's really scary is who are the bad guys. And so everyone thinks it's like state actors like China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, which is true. But the vast majority of the cyber criminals are kids. And in fact, the largest research program into this was run by the EU and led by Professor Julia Davidson. She interviewed 9,000 teenagers across the EU and the UK, and 69% have committed a cybercrime. 69%. What's more scary is that 45% have committed serious financial crime. 45%. So that includes identity theft, that includes financial fraud, stealing of crypto, stealing of gaming currency. And 7% have committed an act of terror, which would be like swatting and bricking and some really insidious stuff. I didn't really believe that when I first read it, but what the FBI, Europol, and Interpol will tell you is that the average age of someone arrested for serious crime is 34 years old. But the average age of someone arrested for cybercrime is 19 years old. And so when you unpick that and you start to look at the anecdotes, well, the 4 guys arrested for the largest retail hack in Europe, which cost $600 million, were aged 17, 19, 20, and 20 years old. The 2 guys arrested for hacking the embassies in The Hague were aged 17 years old. And the 2 guys in court in the UK for hacking Transport for London, which is the transport system, which cost about $20 million and associated with a $150 million crypto hack, were aged 18 years old. So like the profile of the criminals today is extraordinarily young, and they are all groomed off gaming platforms. So gaming is the fertile hotbed for cyber skills development amongst Gen Z. And when you look at the numbers, there are 3.2 billion gamers in the world. 93% of Gen Z game. They spend on average 114 minutes a day gaming. And the people who work this out are the bad guys, not the good guys.
Now, do you have a background in gaming? Just tell us a little bit about yourself as well, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I'm like spectacularly unqualified to found this business. So like, I'm not from cyber, I'm not from defense, I don't know how to hack, I'm not technical. But I am, number one, a gamer since I could move my digits, much to the chagrin of my parents and all the schools I went through. I'm still a gamer now, even though I'm a father of 3. But secondarily, my major qualification here is parental paranoia. So, I was invited into a room with 6 hackers, 3 in the room, 3 on the phone, about 3 years ago, to go and learn about the world of hacking and what was happening. I didn't know anything. And I walked out totally aghast. Because what I learned was that young kids are being groomed from gaming platforms by cyber criminals at a really young age. And fueled by parental paranoia, I actually got on a flight that afternoon from Amsterdam to Zurich. It's one of the most beautiful flights you can do because you fly over the steepest part of the Alps, the European mountain range. So while everyone had their noses against the window, looking out and taking photos and being like, ooh, Toblerone, but in 5D, I was on the other side of the plane, just like hammering away at my laptop, just writing this kind of parental paranoia fueled manifesto saying, oh my God, these amazing kids are being identified and groomed by the bad guys. Surely we've got to provide a pathway out of gaming and hacking gaming into using their skills for good by the good guys. So we use our platform to identify their skills and say, hey guys, here's a career path for you. So that was my entry point into it. And what's really funny is, we've now evaluated 140 games all the way back to games I used to play, from like SimCity to, hilariously, guys may not have it in America, but there's a legendary game in Europe called Championship Manager, where you manage a soccer team. You never even get to play the game. It's just like managing data on a screen. But let me tell you, no one in my generation didn't lose years of their life to that game. So we're kind of back in it. It's really cool.
Well, I love that you're a gamer yourself. I do think that alone makes you uniquely qualified for this. And I am curious, too, if you could tell us a little bit more, because you mentioned you are particularly seeking, as you said, neurodivergent people to kind of join the team, the hacking games. Maybe you could just explain that process a bit more and why maybe that's your target audience or who you're seeking out.
Yeah, well, listen, the correlation between gaming, cryptography, and hacking is not new. Every hacker is a gamer. And that's because the very best gamers, like the very best hackers, study patterns, solve puzzles, are ferociously competitive, often hyper-focused, and they can see around corners, right? Now, to have a brain to see around corners, you can't be neurotypical. You must be neurodiverse, or as we like to call it, neurobrilliant. Now, actually, let's walk back in history. This was discovered in the 1930s when Winston Churchill realized there were two things that were going to win the World War. He needed to persuade Roosevelt to come in, and the second thing they needed to do was to crack the Enigma code. Now, the Enigma code was the communication system between the German U-boats that was shooting down all of the merchant navy in the Atlantic, so they're starving Europe of food and the UK. So what he did is he asked Alan Turing, who was an autistic mathematician, and he said to Alan Turing, I need you to find the world's best corkscrew minds who think differently, that think in spirals, that see round corners, to crack the Enigma code. So what Alan Turing did is he took some cryptographic puzzles and he put them in the newspaper. And he said, if you can crack this puzzle, you get to join this elite squad at Bletchley Park. And the people who cracked that puzzle were predominantly autistic, Polish women. And that was the engineering and the beginning of people understanding that if you are neurodivergent, if you can see patterns and puzzles that others can't, and if you can think round corners, then you're going to be an elite level cryptographer. And if you're an elite level cryptographer, then you are going to be an unbelievable hacker. And so we've traced that pathway to find gamers who are neurodivergent, who look around corners, and then see them as unbelievable cybersecurity professionals and provide pathways into filling the labor deficit, which right now is 4.8 million people in an industry of 5.4 million.
So I see that the first step is joining your Discord. Can you describe what that's like for newcomers?
Yeah, so the Discord is for Gen Z gamers who are obsessed about gaming. And what they want to do is understand how their gaming skills can compare into cyber skills. So it's run by our youth community. We have some amazing young ethical hackers in there, ranging from the age of kind of 15 up to their late 20s. And it's a community for people to, well, first of all, go through the platform, Haptai, the Hacking Aptitude AI platform. And what they can do there is they can go through the terminal. It's a kind of 2-bit terminal structure. And they can share how they game. What games do they play? What types of games do they enjoy? Are they solo or are they team players? They can pick the games of the list of the ones that they play. So it might be that you love playing Valorant, League of Legends, and EVE Online. And then you can talk about your modification approaches. So what mods have you developed? How many of the computer game files and how do you adjust them and adapt them to give yourself an advantage, either to detect cheating or to cheat yourself. We love cheaters because what cheaters do is they show you how you solve problems, right? They talk about how you break codes, how you see around corners. So what you can do is upload your cheat codes and your modification software so that we can see your potential, because we can draw the line between what games you're playing and how you're hacking the games into what your cybersecurity skill sets are. So to give you a really basic example of that, imagine that we're playing Call of Duty and I'm not very clever. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to manually aim at your head with my system and shoot you. But you're really bright, right? You know, you're smart. And what you've done is developed your own modification software. You've created your own aimbot. And so your aimbot enables you to automatically shoot me without having to do anything. So I go home crying like a baby. You go into the next round of the competition with a chance of making money. You know what's really interesting about that? If you're really good at creating aimbots, that is exactly the same cybersecurity skills as memory injection and malware hooks, which means that you're demonstrating elite level cyber skills. But you might only be 15. You might have been doing it for a decade as a teenager, but that never turns up on your LinkedIn or your resume or your university application. But for us, that's unbelievably exciting because what we can see is gamers deploying cyber skills in the hacking of games environment that can show us if you're an elite level talent. And that's what we look for.
That's so cool. I feel like we've talked about that specific area of hackers and games for so long. So it's really cool to see someone talk about it from the positive side. I'm curious, do you guys actually seek out the gamers and the hackers, or do they come to you? Could you maybe walk us through that process a little?
Yeah, I mean, we are really fortunate in that we have a community of about 500 of the world's most influential leading hackers and cybersecurity professionals and gamers. And they bring with them an amazing audience. So we have like Marcus Hutchins is in the community, Chris Weissapal, Bia Skylab, you know, Marco Liberale, these amazing people who adore the mission and want to be part of it. And because of that, they bring communities with them. And that's how we got started. We haven't spent a dollar on marketing. What then happened was we were approached by countries. So governments are saying, hey, look, the world is pretty volatile at the moment, and the amount of cyber attacks from hostile state nations is going through the roof. And you only have to look at electrical grid cutouts in Spain and Portugal, closure of airports in Munich and Berlin, Jaguar Land Rover hacks, embassies being hacked in The Hague to see that, you know, there really is a state of national security threat. So countries are approaching us saying, we want to run programs where we can inspire Gen Z in our country to use their skills in the private sector or the public sector to protect society. So we're now doing this in 4 different countries. We're doing it in the UK, we're doing it in Saudi Arabia, we're doing it in Albania and Kosovo, where we run national programs in partnership with the government, where we inspire Gen Z to be ethical hackers. We bring really famous hackers into universities, high schools, gaming communities, gaming cafes, to inspire them to use their skills for good. We then evaluate them using our platform, which they love because they get to be seen for the first time. And then we provide pathways with companies and governments for careers for them. And because of that, the community just rolls and rolls and rolls, which has become really, really exciting for us.
Yeah, I mean, this sounds like a really great way to like reach a younger generation that probably isn't even aware of what cybersecurity is at the moment. So, I mean, that's humongous. Can you share with us any success stories of people you've helped move into the cybersecurity space?
Yeah, I mean, look, there are some amazing stories of young people who have come from different walks of life. So let me start with a couple of serious ones. So there's 2 guys called Ricky Schumacher and Connor Friedman. Now, let's start with Ricky's story. So Ricky is an American. He was a high school kid. He was actually a top 10 national baseball player by the age of 15. He was on his way to having a baseball scholarship at university and perhaps even a career at the MLB. But when Ricky was 15, he was playing Halo and he was competing in a tournament for money. And his opponent DDoSed him mid-game, cut all of his connectivity. Now, Ricky, like a lot of athletes, is hyper competitive and hyper focused. So what Ricky did is he wanted to find out how. So he went online. And in the end, YouTube taught him, Google gave him the tools, and the Discord gave him the community. And he found out amongst the community how he could develop his own DDoSing skills, and he started to do it. And so he started to DDoS other gamers so he could win. And then he realized he could hack into their gaming accounts and clean them out. So he started doing that and he became really, really good at it. And then one day in a hacking community, he got a tap on the shoulder, and the tap on the shoulder said, "Hey, Ricky, you're really good at this. Do you want to come and learn how to use these skills to hack into crypto wallets?" So he started hacking into crypto wallets. And you fast forward a few years, and Ricky gets prosecuted for a $10 million crypto heist, and he ends up going to jail for 4 years. By this point, Ricky's a young man who was a promising athlete, not what you would imagine from a ridiculous media interpretation of what a hacker looks like. And he ends up in jail in serious crime, right? This is not with the tax fraud guys, So he's in the serious unit, and he comes out 4 years later, and I said to him, "Hey, Ricky, what was it like in there?" Typically stupid question from someone who's not been in jail. And he goes, "Well, I'm not one of them. I'm not naturally criminally minded." He goes, "I've lived with these guys for 4 years. I was a kid who was angry. I was explorative and curious, and this was an extension of my gaming life." So now Ricky, unfortunately, is not allowed to use computers, but he was referred to us by the FBI, along with another gentleman called Connor Freeman, who had a very similar journey, and he also went to jail for a crypto heist. Both of them were part of Scattered Spider, by the way, which is the huge criminal gang. And so we have now employed Connor. Connor is now employed and is working in the hacking games as a cybersecurity operative. We're developing him. We gave him a shot. And we are working with Ricky to inspire other kids all over the world to use their skills. And when the legal system allows us, we will also employ Ricky for his skill sets. So these are kind of two stories of two guys who broke the law, went to prison, did amazing damage, were groomed, but we have given them a pathway back into the industry, and they are incredibly talented. Two other examples, which were less insidious. There is a kid I'm just going to call B because I can't disclose his name. When he was 12 years old, he was playing Roblox, and he found an exploit and he hacked Roblox, and he managed to steal a whole bunch of unreleased tokens of high perceived value, and he sold them on the secondary market. And in one day, he made $35,000 at 12 years old. He then took that $35,000 and put it all into Bitcoin. And 2 years later, he was sitting on a wallet worth $400,000.
Oh my God.
His parents only found out because he went up to them and said, "At what point should I start paying tax?" And just in case anyone's freaking out while they're listening to this, as a minor in the US, it's when you hit $6,000. That's your tax threshold. So the interesting thing about B is he was 100% going down the wrong path. He was incredibly talented, is incredibly talented, and he was exploiting things all over the place. He was selling mods online. That's actually not illegal, but he was definitely diving into a whole host of pretty dangerous spaces and getting involved in the wrong communities. But he was passed over to us. He joined us as an intern. He's been working with the hacking games, and he has now seen that there is a pathway for this incredibly bright kid to use the skills he developed as a hobby for a professional career. And now he's firmly on his way to college and doing that pathway. So that's an example of someone who, at that ethical fork in the road, you can get to before they use their skills for bad.
It's interesting you're sharing all these stories with us, and each one is amazing and unique in its own right. It does remind me a little bit of Kevin Mitnick. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him.
Yeah, of course.
And, I'm just wondering from your side, Fergus, if you think in a lot of ways, the kids who genuinely are not in it, as you say, to be criminally minded, those who are just curious and kind of exploring technology, do you feel society might be a bit too harsh on them? I mean, Kevin Mitnick had mixed reactions from law enforcement up until, unfortunately, when he passed away rather young. I mean, we would see him at conferences and, it just wasn't always clear how people felt about him, even up until today.
Well, look, let's trace it back to the origins of humanity. Hacking is a creative mindset. Ultimately, it's looking at an existent structure, breaking it down to its component parts, and working out what's vulnerable, what can be used and repurposed, and what can be improved on. So without hacking, we would still be riding horses to work. We'd still be reading by candlelight or heating ourselves by coal. It is the essence that separates humanity from the other animals in the jungle. And yet it is being connoted as negative because the media presents only one version of a hacker. It's the hoodie up, it's no face, it's the Matrix in the background hammering away at a keyboard, right? But guess who were ethical hackers? Tim Berners-Lee and Nigel Shadbolt, who created the World Wide Web. They're ethical hackers. If you look at Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, they got the seed capital for Apple by being paid to penetration test people's phone lines. Bill Gates got banned from using computers and telephones at the age of 12 years old for a year because he was freaking. But we see these guys, predominantly of that list I just gave, as heroic, as innovators, as industry leaders, as people who've created the foundations of society, have contributed GDP and created jobs. So I think we really need to look at not the labels of criminal hacker or ethical hacker, but understand that this is human curiosity. And if you look at the psychology of it, the frontal cortex of a teenager doesn't develop until they're in their late teens and early 20s. That's why you can, particularly in boys, and if you've got any relation to a teenage boys, you'll understand this. You might be studying physics and chemistry at the age of 16, 17 years old for your SATs, but you'll still ride a BMX downhill and put the front brake on to see what happens, right? Because your frontal cortex isn't developed. But also, isn't it interesting that Einstein himself said, the greatest creativity comes in young minds. I think there's some stat, you'd need to check this, that Einstein didn't actually innovate anything beyond the age of 24, right? So we are punishing creativity and innovation amongst the youth. And then you add in a layer of neurodiversity, which has always been seen as a handicap. They've been special or difficult or weird. They're outliers and outsiders. But the neurodiverse people, they're the guys who solve the biggest problems in the fastest way. And now technology is developed at a rate that can match their creativity. So I think we're looking at it all upside down. I think we shouldn't see this generation as criminals. We should see them as creators. And we should give them pathways and opportunities and aptitude evaluations to say, hey, you are incredibly talented here, and here is an alternative to the criminal stuff you have access to. And the vast majority will take it. Some will not, and that is a slither of society. But the vast majority want to express their creativity and innovation in a way that they can get rewarded and they get the satisfaction of doing the hard stuff.
Fergus, it's been wonderful having you on this podcast. I do have one bonus question before you go, but first, I just want to give you a chance to shout out your website, where people can find you. And yeah, indeed, is that Discord the first place people should join to get deeper involved in this?
Yeah, so please visit our website. It's www.thehackinggames.com. On there, you will see all of the programs we run, all the partnerships we have, and how you can get involved. You can check out our community on the Discord. We'll send all the details for that. Follow us on TikTok. Our young hackers create these hilarious talks every day that I don't understand, but they get millions and millions and millions of views. So you participate in that. If you're a parent who's worried or keen to find a pathway for a potentially neurodivergent gamer, get in contact with us. We have partnerships and programs all over. If you're a company that wants to identify the next generation of elite level talent, get in touch with us and join all of the other companies we work with to provide career paths for these kids.
So this is just a bonus question I always like to ask people who join us on this series. What games are you playing right now, or what are you excited to see coming up? Just anything you want to talk about there.
Yeah, so I've got young boys. So right now I'm deep on EVE Online. I'm deep on EAFC, which is a soccer game that in Europe, you've got to understand this is religion.
Yeah.
I'm introducing them to what's now called Football Manager. I'm playing with my daughter BitLife, which is a really interesting simulation game. She and I play a load of chess together. She's like embarrassingly bright and I'm really not. So she's wiping the floor with me all over. What I would encourage any guardian, parent, brother, cousin is if the door is shut and your kid is gaming and you're on the wrong side of the door, get in there and game with them. I play Roblox with my kids all the time. We play 99 Nights together, and you got to be in the game. You got to play with the kids. You got to be part of culture, because gaming is not an outsourced nanny system. Gaming is a live laboratory for skills development. It's also a live laboratory for social skills. It's also an exposure platform to predatory instincts. So be in there, play with them, game with them, and you will be part of their culture. And I'll give you an example of that. There's an amazing lady who is a professor at a university, and she's quite kind of quill and ink vibes. And she has a single child. She's of South Asian origin. So there's a really tight bond between mother and son. And when he was 11 years old, she started losing him. He started like disappearing from her, just like emotionally. And she said, we're losing each other. How do we stay connected? And he said, well, Mom, if you want a relationship with me, you got to start playing Counter-Strike. And she was like, play what? Maybe she could get around to playing cards or something, but playing Counter-Strike. Anyway, so this lady, proper quill and ink professor, started learning how to play Counter-Strike. 10 years later, she's in London. He's in San Francisco in the Bay Area. They play Counter-Strike every day together.
That's amazing.
That's how they communicate. They speak online. They've built this amazingly deep, empowered relationship based on her sharing culture with him. So get in there, game with your kids, learn with your kids, and you'll be so impressed about the skill sets that they develop in the gaming environment that this high school system is completely ill-equipped to teach them.
Fergus, thank you so much for joining us. And a lot of what you said, I feel like is quotes we need to put on plaques and put all throughout our office because your positivity is really awesome.
Guys, my pleasure. Anything I can do to help, game on. We have a little sentence that says, built different, wired to win. That's what I think this generation is. And our job is to provide a platform for them to soar.
For Cybercrime Radio, I'm Paul John Spaulding. Co-hosting with me, as always, is Sam White and Kyle Hagland. To follow more of our media, visit cybersecurityventures.com.